either loading haul trucks, contractor trucks, or he's transporting material to a secondary crusher or conveyor. Aaron gives Willie a call on the radio and says,
How about you, Willie?
Go ahead.
Hey, buddy, it's Aaron over here on the loader. About 20 minutes. Can you come over here? I got a doctor's appointment at 1 o'clock.
10-4, I'll be right there.
Willie arrives. Aaron gets off the loader. What's supposed to happen? Willie's supposed to climb up in the cab, put the seatbelt on, and roll, right? No. Willie must stop the machine, take an inspection form, and then completely go through the examination steps on the form. Willie can't take Aaron's word that the machine is operating just fine. Willie must inspect the equipment as if he is the first and only operator that will use the loader on the upcoming shift. You're thinking, what a waste of time. No. First of all, federal law requires the inspection, and indeed, Willie may find a hazard that is developed during Aaron's operation of the equipment. In this case, Willie discovers the brakes aren't working properly, records this, and immediately reports the condition to his supervisor and the mechanic. Not reporting equipment defects arising during operation. A mechanic has been grinding a piece of metal when the gap becomes too large between the tool rest and the piece of metal. The metal slips into the gap during grinding. Should the mechanic pick up the metal and finish grinding, or should he immediately take the grinder out of service and adjust the tool rest to close the gap to 1/8 of an inch? Correctly, a supervisor counsels the mechanic to turn the grinder off, lock out, tag out, and try the energy to the grinder. The supervisor observes the mechanic make the tool rest adjustment, reverse the energy lockout, and only then resume grinding the piece of metal. Now, in another example, Johnny is driving a haul truck from the mine's working stockpiles to build berms around a lake where the dredge will operate. He's been on this shift for hours and only has an hour to go before the shift is over. In heading back for another load of material, Johnny rolls onto the travelway and he hears an unusual grinding sound in his left front wheel. Johnny's faced with a tough decision because there's only an hour left on the shift and those berms really need to be built. Johnny thinks, do I roll on, discharge the load to keep building the berms and then have the noise checked? Or do I stop in a safe area and inspect this visually? The answer is simple. Johnny's got to stop in a safe area, apply the brakes, correctly chock the vehicle, and then visually inspect the left front wheel. Luckily, it is a darn good thing that Johnny stopped correctly. During his examination, he finds that the tire and the wheel mechanism are loose and they are literally about to shear away from the truck axle. Johnny calls his supervisor and the mechanic on the radio. He reports the wheel hazard and he seeks immediate help.
I talked with Roger. We're having trouble with his haul truck. I heard some noise in the left front tire. Got out and checked it out. Looks like a bearing's going out in it.
Hey, Johnny, if you got any doubts about that, man, just stop what you're doing, and I'll come over and take a look at it.
Operators, while operating equipment, you must resist the temptation to hurry the shift and fail to inspect and report a hazardous defect that may develop during operation. In addition to sparing further damage to the wheel and axle, Johnny may very well have prevented a fatal accident.
Can you see that roadblocks or stumbling blocks can cause you and others great danger? Well, we're not finished yet. We've got a few more examples for you.
Failing to report a defect because you're unfamiliar with equipment. Hard to believe that an experienced forklift operator could miss a hazard during the inspection process, right? Jim's been operating a forklift for about 5 years. He's been a very safe operator. He always gets to work on time. He never fails to properly perform a pre-shift examination on the forklift. On this particular day, Jim sees there's a forklift that he doesn't recognize, and it's parked in the forklift parking area. His supervisor explains that the company has rented this particular forklift while the regular forklift is in the shop for major repairs. This is a model that Jim hasn't inspected or operated before. So, Jim takes the inspection form and he begins a routine inspection just like he's done 100 times before. Forks are in good condition. The mast is intact. The travel chains are lubricated, and there aren't any damaged links in the chains. Jim opens the engine compartment. He checks the vital fluids in the belts. He sees a small hose with a leak. A lot of hoses in there. Jim assumes it's no big deal. What's one hose out of a ton of hoses? So on the inspection form, he doesn't even record the leaking hose. This is a newer model rental forklift, and what Jim doesn't know is that little hose is connected to the brake fluid chamber and brake system. Being unfamiliar with this forklift and the particular hose on the forklift has caused Jim to miss a vital leak that very well could lead to failure in the braking system. Operators, never assume any part of that machine isn't vital to safe operation. With a new or rental piece of equipment like this forklift, supervisors and/or mechanics should provide detailed task training to the operator. Operators, you should study the operating manual in detail and ask any questions that you may have regarding any part or system on the forklift. Ask those questions and read the manual prior to performing a pre-shift inspection and operating the machine.
Failure to completely perform all of the inspection.
Another example of an improper pre-shift inspection has to do with a front-end loader that Ben is examining and an overlooked and non-recorded defect. Item by item, Ben goes through the checklist. Tires are in good condition. Arms from the loader to the bucket, they don't have any stress cracks. Hose connections, they're secure. Steps up to the cab aren't bent or missing. Cab glass and windshield are clean and they got no cracks or damage. Bucket is solid and there are no bucket teeth missing. All appear